And I want to thank my friends for joining us in Twitch chat. We got Ace Caltor, who's my friend Adrian, who was at the Super Bowl party with you, champ. And yeah, I'm happy to have him in chat. And I've been thankful to have my mods, watching chat and everyone for joining in and people joining live on Facebook on the True Radio Network. And that's been cool too. And I have to try to figure out why my computer isn't working. I may try something real fast while you're talking to see if I can get back on that old one because I do need to screen share for the next thing. So I'm gonna actually leave it on lurk mode on that screen for a little bit, and then we'll see how long that it goes for. And if it stays up for this whole next segment, then I will move over to it for the following one. But yeah, if people don't know, behind the scenes, my crazy setup. I've got a PC running the stream on Twitch and on Facebook and everything, and the Zoom masterboard, and it's hardwired into the Ethernet. So no Wi-Fi, no drops, nothing, right? And so that's how that one is set up. And then I zoom to it from another computer. I usually use my personal computer. It was not working. So I switched to my work one. I usually use my work one to have chat up on stream. So I can see all the different chats across all the different platforms, whether it be Facebook, or live on on Twitch. So no Wi-Fi, no drops, or live. There you go. But I really appreciate everyone for tuning in. And I see for tuned in. I didn't see that live, but she was saying that she was waiting on the Metro and just tuned in. Hell of a game. The shoulder survived. So I'm happy. I don't know if Cheryl's still listening, but thanks for tuning in. And then Troy said earlier, I hope Oshi is okay. And he also said he played Pokemon Red and Yellow and Blue. I wish it was on the Xbox. I would get it. Yeah, but Nintendo's never gonna get it off of the Switch. Like that's their catch cow. So I think a lot of people would be in your boat and would do that. But anyway, I appreciate everyone tuning in live on the True Radio Network page, champ. We're going live from there because my computer, my PC, that's so great can't seem to log into our SportsOTHP live page, or it doesn't give it as a drop-down option, even though I can go live from my phone. But all that being said, that's a reset. We did win the game 6-3. We've had a great night so far, champ. I want you to help me break down the Elimination Chamber, which was kind of exciting, but also kind of went according to yeah.
Hold on. Let's hold off on the wrestling talk. That's going to be very extensive. Let's start with DC United having such a successful opening game of their season. I appreciate you sending me that highlight video. It was really good because me and my attention span, I can't sit through a whole soccer game. I just can't do it.
Yeah,
I can't do it.
8 minute highlight reel is wonderful. In fact, I'm actually gonna pull up my chat with Champ. I'm gonna put it in the Twitch chat for people who may want to know how we did but don't have it. I'm not gonna show it live on because I don't want to deal with copyright issues, right? So,
Yeah.
but I am gonna drop it in to both the Facebook chat right now. And let me see, does that work? Yep. And then I'm also gonna drop it into our Twitch chat right now. And yeah, anyway, there we go. So if anyone wants to watch the soccer highlights in another tab while we're talking about it, whatever. It was a great game. And I agree. I think that's a good way to break it down. Do you want me to break down the scoring of it, or do you want to do it?
I can break down the scoring. So basically, the scoring started in the 34th minute with Christian Benteke getting the goal, which was actually reviewed. It looked like it didn't go in. It looked like it was a save, but upon further review, it looked like it was shown that it crossed the goal line, so it was called a goal. The assist came from Santos, and that put DC United on the board 1-0 there. Then later on, we would see a goal from Gill of New England Revolution. Carlos Gill, who's a midfielder, he would score for New England to tie everything up. That goal came in the 67th minute, so in the second half of this game. But then afterwards, we would see Benteke get his second goal in the 72nd minute, and what was a beautiful goal from him. And then in the third, in extra time in the second half, Benteke would add a third goal, so he would get all three goals and a hat trick in the season opener to give DC United a 3-1 victory over the New England Revolution. Again, Christian Benteke had three goals on three shots on goal. So it seemed like every shot he made on goal, it went in. And so that's how they were able to get the victory. They had 54% of the possession of the during the game and had 30 shots on goal. Of course, three of them were in. They had 7 corner kicks, and we also saw red cards on three yellow cards on both sides, with one red card which kind of got New England out of sorts when that red card came out early on in the game. Well, not really early on, but midway through the first half. That's what led to the first goal for DC
I have to say
United.
that that was a questionable call, right? Because I didn't see enough that was warranted. He
That's
must.
what I'm saying. I didn't even know what happened. I just know I heard a whistle, then I saw a yellow card go up, and then I saw a red card. I was like, well, what happened?
Well, it was studs up, which is a dangerous play, and it can really hurt somebody into the leg, which I get that. But I think that he must have mouthed off afterwards. Because studs up, I think if he would have had come out and said sorry, whatever, contrition, whatever, I think he would have just been set with a yellow card. But I think it's because he was like, "What? I did nothing, blah blah blah," right to the ref, And I think the ref was like, "No, like you could be ejected for this, and now you are. So." But
Yeah, but I will say this though. That atmosphere in Audi Field was crazy. It was crazy, the
I gotta get
atmosphere.
myself to a game this year. I want to go to one of those games and a Defenders game in Audi Field. I would love to go to both. I just it sounds like such a great time, and I love that this is the first game of this new era. And I think that this is an important red card because it changed that whole game because it put New England on its heels. They had some opportunities, but you have to, in soccer, it's like a chess game. You take somebody off, a piece off the field like that, right? Then the whole strategy has to change, right? And
Right.
so it's very different than hockey where you just have to account for it for 2 minutes. Like that happened 30 minutes in. It's a 90-minute game. They're gonna have to deal for an hour of them not. And by the way, stoppage time in both halves were, I think, over 7 minutes. So not only is it an hour 90, it was like add another 15 to that. Like,
No, the stoppage time for the first half was about 5 minutes, and then the second half it was 7. So it was
okay,
12 minutes
so
combined
12,
stoppage
12
time.
more minutes of not having a player, so like,
Exactly.
yeah, so that's still like 72 minutes, which is a lot. So like
Yeah,
the fact that it wasn't even more of a blowout, is kind of, surprising. But I love the intensity and I love the energy, and it's a great way to sort of start a new era, if you will. And
absolutely.
yeah.
I
So
do gotta give props to Alex Bono, who played goalie for DC United. He only gave up the one goal, but he had 4 saves on this night, and a couple of those saves were really good saves. He was really solid in net and things like that. And he really kept it together for DC, allowing DC on the offensive end to be able to score the 3 goals. Again, Benteke was absolutely stellar he was absolutely stellar on this night with the 3 goals, scoring all 3 goals for DC United. And I think that that's going to be someone to keep an eye on throughout the season if he can continue that kind of production. I think if
I mean,
DC
we've never
United can,
seen something like that. I mean, he's a good player and he's played in other leagues, but he's like 33 now. So I think in some ways we thought the numbers were declining. He had a rough, last couple of years where he definitely put up numbers, but never like this. I mean, this is projected to be a way higher year if he could, keep this up. I know it's one game,
absolutely.
but
I'm gonna tell you something. If DC United can keep up this kind of performance throughout the entire season, it will. be a complete 180 from what they did last season, where they just struggle, and then had to rely on strong performances towards the end of the season in order to get into the playoffs, and they couldn't make it. I think if they can put together a solid performances all across the season, I don't think they're going to have to sweat their way into the playoffs. I think they can play their way into the playoffs and then some. But it starts with this game here. It definitely starts with this game. And I think that this is a strong foundation for them to be able to hopefully get back to the glory years that DC United had when MLS first started way back in the mid 90s. And this is the start right here. Right here is the start of something that could be really good or it can go really bad.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does, right? He's been an interim coach before, but I don't think he's ever like full-time been MLS, level coach. So obviously it's a big moment for Troy. Is it Lassine? Or Lassaigne? Lassane, maybe? Yeah, Troy Lassane. But yeah, it's uh I know. I was very excited to see that they performed well. It's just so crazy to me that soccer is already back. I just can't believe 77 days is all they get between seasons. Like that's
Yeah,
like
that's short for all season. Like the only sport in the world where all season shorter than that is wrestling, because there is no all season.
right. But anyone that does have an off season, which most of them do, it's most of them are 3 months or longer. Like even like baseball is considered short, in a lot of ways, but like I don't know.
Baseball, I think, has one of the longest off seasons because their season usually ends late October, early November, and then they don't start back up until around March,
Right,
like late February, early
still,
March.
they still, I guess you're right. I guess it's just number of games. They just play so many in such a condensed period of time. It just feels like a longer season. You know what I mean? Like it's just,
Yeah,
it's like 162 games is crazy. Um,
true.
but uh, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I guess I wonder how the other off seasons are. I mean, hockey and basketball are about the same. And football is interesting, especially football now is an interesting off season with these other teams and players that were on NFL teams, now going to the UFL to see what they can do. And we've somebody retired this week on the Defenders, and I'm drawing a blank on who it was. Um, so much sports news happens in a week. It's hard to remember it all, but I know that they got their quarterback back, and then one of their top wide receivers last week retired. Hold on.
Mm. I think this is going to be a good season for the Defenders, and we'll talk about that when you're
Yeah,
back from your spring break.
Josh Hammond is who it was. Yeah, so
Okay.
that definitely hurt because he was pretty good for them. But they did just sign somebody, I think. Who was it? Kiki Cotier. So I guess he played with Houston from 2018 to 2020.
Mhm.
So um, so yeah. Anyway, I'm interested to see how the team shapes up. I hope they can run it back. They brought back the same coaches, mostly a lot of the same team. And they're the runner-ups last year. So I'm happy they're able to retain some of that same identity because they did so well last year. And I'm hoping they do what the Mystics did a couple of years back, where the Mystics got so close to breaking through and winning it, and then they didn't, and then they ran it back. And then they did win it. And so that's what I'm hoping this year for them. But yeah, anyway, it was a great win by DC United, and I appreciate you helping me break it down, champ. And maybe the next couple weeks until we get to March Madness and Defenders talk, we might make this now a new segment. I probably should have put the DC United graphic up. Oh well. Things things you think about later. But champ, talk to us about wrestling pay-per-view. I did watch some of the highlights of it. Seemed very exciting, except somewhat predictable. I think most people kind of got the gist of it before it happened. I prefer when more surprises happen, when there's belts changing hands and things come out of nowheres and things like that. But why don't you break it down, the main core events? I know that you did a great job. I actually lurked on your show yesterday, breaking it down much more in depth, and so I will suggest people go check that out. But if you could do like a quick thoughts on each of the different matches, and
Right.
can direct them for more.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, Elimination Chamber was very predictable because of the fact it's the last PLE before WrestleMania. They tend to not try to do anything major at this show because they already have plans in place for WrestleMania. But we kind of figured that Drew McIntyre was going to win the men's elimination chamber because of the CM Punk injury. That was the next best option for them in terms of challenging Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship. Because anybody else in that spot was not going to be the best option to face Seth Rollins. There's already a story there. There's already a past and a history there between Seth and Drew McIntyre. So it made all the sense in the world that Drew be the one to win the chamber. What I liked about it though is how they managed to also set up a couple of more potential matches at WrestleMania within the men's elimination chamber, which would be Logan Paul is the current United States champion, and Randy Orton after he cost Randy the elimination chamber with the brass knucks. After Randy hit the RKO on Drew McIntyre. The other one would be what AJ Styles did to LA Knight in the elimination chamber, setting up that one because they've had something going on since AJ Styles returned from his kayfabe injury, and so that's a great thing that they did within the chamber, set up a possibility of those two matches taking place. The women's match was really good because of the fact that Tiffany Stratton, who just got called up to the main roster from NXT, a former NXT Women's Champion, really shined in this matchup. But there's a lot of conjecture online about Naomi, who just came back after a stint in TNA as their top women's champion, only being in there for under 15 minutes of the match. So there's a lot of conjecture online with that and how that might hurt her in her return run with the company. But we kind of felt that Becky Lynch was going to win that one because of the fact that she already kind of set up a story about wanting to face Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship, saying she needs to beat Rhea and this, that, and third. So it made all the sense in the world that she'd be the one to win it. I love the fact that Rhea got to be the main event in her home country in front of her countrymen and women. And even though she is aligned as a heel, she was the baby face in this matchup, and it showed. She had the reaction, that she got the big reaction, the big pop, the cheers, everything like that. And I said this on the podcast, which is up now on Spotify and on Amazon Music. One of the great things about when she made her entrance, the announcers said nothing. And I love that because they allowed the moment to be there. They didn't talk over it and say all these different things and everything like that. They just, when her music hit and she walked out there and the crowd was going nuts, they said nothing. And I love that because anywhere else they probably would have talked over it and you wouldn't have felt the moment. But for them to just not say anything, you got to feel the moment. Like I'm literally getting goosebumps right now thinking about it. That's how good the moment was of her walking out to a stadium that was packed. Over 52,000 fans were in that stadium, all cheering on Rhea Ripley, who is naturally a heel. But because she's from Australia, and this is her first time wrestling in Australia outside of an indie promotion in her wrestling career, that was a big moment for her. And to be able to put on the match that she did against Nia Jax, which me and Sid both agree, this is one of Nia Jax's better matches in her wrestling career. Because Nia Jax has been notoriously known as not a very safe worker and a very sloppy worker, but this is one of her better matches. And to put it in as the main event was what was a great move. The tag match was predictable because again, Judgment Day, they're gonna definitely have something going on at WrestleMania. Kabuki Warriors, we knew they were going to retain, even though it was great for Indy to also wrestle in front of her countrymen and women in Australia. And I mean, everything about this show was predictable, but it had a reasoning to be predictable because it's setting up what's going to happen at WrestleMania. And then, of course, you had the Grayson Waller effect on there, where Grayson Waller, who is a natural cocky heel, even he had to play almost like the babyface role and allowing his friend Austin Theory to get beat up by both Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins and not jump in because he has the love of his countrymen. So all in all, it was a predictable pay-per-view, but it was still an enjoyable pay-per-view. Even though, and that's what I like about certain shows. Like it could be predictable, whatever. As long as the in-reaction and the storytelling is entertaining enough, it's acceptable. It's when it becomes a point where it's predictable, but it's also boring storytelling and boring in-reaction that you'd be like, why did I watch this? Or why did I invest time in this? And things like that. This was the first WWE pay-per-view that we didn't live stream react to since we started doing live stream reactions, because me and Sith are both old men. We're not getting up at 5 a.m. to talk about this on Twitch. We just weren't going to do it, which was fine. But it still was very enjoyable to watch, and we had fun talking about it on the podcast.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the podcast. I hope that people go check it out. Podcast partners button again, sportsothp.com. But yeah, seemed like a really exciting thing. I love one of the things I do got to give credit to WWE is their social media. If I don't want to spend all the time watching the pay-per-views, if I just am glued to their socials, you get a lot of the big moments and tastes of a lot of the things. If you want to go more in depth, you got to watch the pay-per-view. Want to go more in depth than that, then watch the podcast as well, but or listen to the replay. Or do you guys keep your VODs up on Twitch?
We keep them up as long as Twitch keeps them up. Yes.
Yeah. So you can always catch them during that week and stuff like that. I know we don't ever really shout people out to tell them to do that, but I know a lot of people go back and watch my VODs later because it's late at night, and I only have to do one show a week, and so I appreciate that ability to do it. I actually take them and then I highlight the whole thing, and that makes them stay forever. And then you can actually send those highlights directly to Facebook or to YouTube, which is awesome. So I actually segment, if people don't know this, if they're listening live on Facebook or may not even know it as part of my Twitch thing, what I do is I take every episode and I edit it backwards. So this will be part two, so I'll edit the part that's the video editing, that'll be part three. This will be part two. Then the hockey talk will be part one. I edit backwards so that way when you go to the page, it shows the most recently edited one first and then forward. So it actually then tells the story first, second, third. I found that glitch. Does that make sense? So I highlight it in reverse so that way when you play it back, it plays back in the correct order. And then I send it to YouTube in the same way. I send it in reverse, and then that way, if you go to my page, the most recently released one is actually the first one in the story, and I release them all at the same time.
Right.
And people can then watch them back on. In fact, my website sportsothp.com has just been updated with all the previous episodes. So if you miss anything from any of them, it's got all those video clips. And I do that on purpose. So if that way people only care about hockey, only care about wrestling, they can watch those highlights back, and it also makes them last forever, both on YouTube and on Twitch as well. So
By the way, Robbie, there was another pay-per-view. Well, not really a pay-per-view, but a big event for TNA that happened this past weekend as well, which Sith and I talked about on the podcast this past week, which was No Surrender, which was the first event for TNA post the dismissal of former President Scott Demore. And one of the biggest news stories coming out of that event was that former WWE superstar Mustafa Ali, in his very first match in TNA, became the X Division champion in the main event, defeating former 10-time X Division champion Chris Sabin in what was a phenomenal main event. Mustafa Ali has this whole like presidential gimmick going on where he's giving these messages in these suits. He has these like sort of like Secret Service security and everything like that. It's such a brilliant gimmick that he tried to get going in WWE, but they just would not run with it, which ultimately led to his eventual release. But now he's using that gimmick on the indies and with TNA. and it is absolutely taken off. And he's now won his first major title in his professional wrestling career, and one of the most prestigious titles in wrestling, which is the X Division Championship in his very first match in TNA. But TNA No Surrender is another one. If you have access to their YouTube channel and you're an Ultimate Insider, you can watch it for free with that Ultimate Insider subscription. They had some really good matches on there. They had only 2 title changes on there, which was the X Division Championship in the main event. And then earlier on, MK Ultra once again became the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Champions, defeating Decay after a very short reign for Decay. But it looks like they're setting up a rivalry between the new tag champs and MK Ultra and the team of Jody Threat and Danny Luna. So a lot went on with this show. Alex Shelley was unable to regain the TNA World Championship in what was their first ever no surrender match, which is basically an old school type rules match where the only way to win is if your corner men or women threw in the towel, which is old school. That's old school wrestling. But they used that old school rule in what they call the no surrender match. And I mean, they really did a really good job. So I'm really interested to see how they move forward from this. But TNA is right now at a very critical point after letting go of Scott D'Amore unceremoniously. By the way, I mean he was fired, but now they're at a critical point where they need to really move forward because they don't want to end up like what WCW became in 2000 2001, which ultimately led to their demise. TNA could easily go down that route, or they can go the opposite way and really thrive. So this show right here was really a barometer of where they can possibly go from here with Scott D'Amore no longer at the helm as president. But that was another event that happened this weekend that was really good, and I'm really anxious to see what they do here. And then you mentioned earlier on about March Madness, right?
Mhm.
Well, there's a different type of March Madness that goes on in wrestling. It's called the New Japan Cup tournament in New Japan, which they announced the brackets for this year's tournament that will begin on March the 6th. So after they did their 2 nights in Sapporo this past weekend, so again, this was a big weekend in wrestling. You had Elimination Chamber, you had No Surrender for TNA, and you also had the New Beginning in Sapporo, which saw 2 former WWE superstars become champions in Japan. Matt Riddle defeated Hiroshi Tanahashi to become the New Japan World TV Champion, and that was in the semi-main event. And then the very next match in the main event, the former Dolph Ziggler, now going by his real name of Nick Nemeth, became the IWGP Global Heavyweight Champion, defeating David Finlay in a banger of a main event. And he's getting ready, Nick Nemeth is, to defend his championship in March at the anniversary event against Hiroshi Tanahashi, who he says has been his hero when it comes to wrestling. So it's a lot going on, especially with New Japan. They got their anniversary event coming up. They're celebrating 52 years in existence, one of the oldest wrestling promotions in the world. And two of the highlight matches on that card a couple of the highlighted matches on that card is Hiroshi Tanahashi challenging for the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship against Nick Nemeth. There's going to be 3 New Japan Cup first round matches that are taking place on the card, and then there's also going to be for the main event the return of the anniversary event tradition of the IWGP Heavyweight, or in this case, World Heavyweight Champion, taking on the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. In this case, it's not Tetsuya Naito, who defended successfully against Sonata on the second night in Sapporo, against Sho, who won the Junior Heavyweight Championship on one of the most BS ways you can, which was a countout, which only in Japan you can win a championship via countout. Anywhere else, you can't win a championship via countout. But in Japan, you can win a championship via countout or disqualification. And Sho won on a countout and became the junior heavyweight champion for the first time in his career. He's getting a chance to take on Naito in that event. And then the New Japan Cup will continue on until March the 20th, where the finals will take place. And this is the only tournament in New Japan that is not round robin. It is a straight up knockout tournament where if you win in advance, you lose and you're out. And so I'm always excited to cover this tournament. Meet myself and Sage. We will be covering this tournament.
How many wrestlers are in the tournament?
28.
Wow.
28 wrestlers, 24 will be competing in first round matches. 4 get buys who are former winners of this tournament. Zack Sabre Jr., who's the 2-time winner. He last won it in 2022. Evil, who won it in 2020, which led to his defection from LIJ to Bullet Club, leading to him creating House of Torture. He won it back in 2020. Hiroki Goto, who's a 3-time winner, was actually called Mr. March because of he won it 3 times in 5 years. And then the fourth, who was the fourth one? The fourth one is Zach. No, it was actually the fourth one. I can't remember who's the fourth one, but they're former winner as well. But they all got first round buys because they're previous winners. They are awaiting the winners of first round matches to determine who they will face in the second round. But again, this is a very unique tournament for New Japan because of the fact it's not a round robin point system tournament. It's a knockout tournament, but the winner of the tournament in its entirety goes on to Sakura Genesis in April to face Tetsuya Naito for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship in the main event. So there's a lot at stake for these 28 wrestlers to be able to get a shot at the IWGP World title. And I just remember, and so Nick Nemeth will not be defending the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship at the anniversary show. It'll be at Sakura Genesis. So it won't be in March, it'll be in April, but it's already there. It's already looked like a stacked card for Sakura Genesis, and the whole card hasn't even been announced yet.
That's awesome. If people want to know a lot more, because there's a lot to unpack with all of that, and all the different pay-per-views, definitely go check out the No Spots podcast. Uh, yeah, I appreciate you for helping us break it down and, giving people who might not get a chance to know about wrestling a little taste of it. And we got to talk soccer, we got to talk hockey. I know we really didn't talk about the Wizards. I will say that it's been a rough couple of weeks for them. I'll just in its basic form, we have not played very well, and we continue to only have 9 wins, which is rough, especially with having 48 losses. And we haven't won a game in the month of February, which is rough. And we have 2 games left. One is against Golden State, which I love how injured people are coming back and being healthy against us in that game. And Chris Paul. And that game is tomorrow, February 27th, and Thursday at the Lakers, 10:30 game. And then yeah, so that's Thursday. And then on Friday, they play at the Clippers. And then next Monday, there'll be a live game at Utah, which we will watch and probably lose. So yeah,
This team is a dumpster fire. I don't like giving up on my local teams no matter what, but I've given up on this Wizards team. Like this season's lost.
I
This
will
season is absolutely lost.
I will do a news and note though, just in the sense that Joker finally did it, where Joker has had a triple double on every team in the NBA. Andy, every single team that they have played, he has gotten a triple double. Which means that he's gotten 10 or more points, assists, rebounds, and all of them. Does he do any block ones? Has he gotten any block triple doubles? I don't know. I know some people have, but I think that they're all just with the other 3 stats. But he had never done it against the Wizards. And so I knew going into that, this is the only team he hasn't done it, and that he was going to go for it. And he almost did it in 3 quarters, champ. And yeah, anyway, it's it's pretty brutal. That was the only news and noteworthy thing that happened to us is somebody got a triple double against us to solidify. Only there's 2 people that have actually gotten triple doubles on every team in the league, but to do that you have to change teams, right? Because you have to have gotten traded, otherwise you can't, get it against yourself. He's only ever played for Denver, so he so far has every other team, but still a very impressive stat, and not many
Hmm.
people they've ever done that. So
Right.
yeah, the Wizards are trash, but I figured we should still mention that. But Champ, I think we're gonna end the audio podcast here. And I'm gonna switch to do some video editing. But
Really quickly though, Robbie, just to let your listeners know, listen to episode 233 of the podcast this week. Not only do we go in depth about Elimination Chamber No Surrender and talk about the week in wrestling, but in my final thoughts, I correlate the show Law and Order SVU into what's going on right now with the ongoing allegations against Vince McMahon by Janelle Grant. And also, a big shout out to Wrestling Inc., the website Wrestling Inc., who did an entire article about the text messages that were sent between Grant and McMahon during that period of time that things were going on. And I'm going to tell you something. If you read that, you better have a very, very strong stomach, because some of the stuff you read on this is absolutely repulsive. It is repulsive, it is repugnant, and it will really bring out some emotions that I don't think you ever thought you would feel in your life. I read that article and I was sick. I was absolutely sick to my stomach reading some of the stuff that this old man who runs one of the most powerful wrestling organizations in the world was sending to this woman. It was sickening. And I would highly advise, if you seek this article out, bear, just understand that you're going to be very, very sickened and upset when you read some of this stuff. It's absolutely repulsive.
yeah, it's it's just interesting. Like WWE is doing a lot of smoke and mirrors and showing a lot of different things. Bringing Rock back and having a good tournament and trying to. It's interesting to see that they're not covering it up, but they're trying to basically cover their tracks and saying, "Hey, look over here." While all these horrible things are being put out about what has been happening with the franchise for so many years, and so. Um,
Yeah, this lawsuit has brought out a lot of old wounds, such as a former female referee who accused Vince McMahon of assaulting her, as well as old stories of male executives propositioning wrestlers. I mean, it's really opened up a lot of old wounds, and it's not looking pretty for WWE right now. Yeah, they could boast like great numbers in terms of the gate of events and TV ratings and profits and stuff like that. But this lawsuit has really opened up Pandora's box. And myself and Seth and Donnie has said this in our group chat that someone's got to pay for this, whether it be civilly or criminally. Someone's got to pay. Hopefully, criminally is something it's possible, because I don't know what the statute of limitations when it comes to this type of thing is in Connecticut, but hopefully, criminally, someone pays for this. And whoever in WWE was responsible for trying to cover this up, hopefully they lose their job, or they go to prison, or both. But someone needs to be held liable for this, honestly, because no one makes something like this up. I mean, some people will say, "Oh, they can make it." I don't think someone would go to the lengths, and this is something I learned watching SVU. No one would go to the lengths of going through, putting something like this out there in the public, going through the litigation of this just because, or faking it. They just wouldn't do it. And that's why we're paying such close attention to this, because of the fact that something can come out of this, and something will come out of this, and eventually someone who thought they was almighty, all powerful, and untouchable is going to get touched. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that people should be watching, all of that information. Definitely check out Champ's podcast for more on that. I am going to end episode 332 cap special live game and win and recap of the previous week, which we had gotten 5 out of 6 points in. We also had DC United returns where we had a hat trick and they won the first game of the season. We had wrestling talk, and then we will be doing our scuba editing and maybe some. Photoshop work here as we go up to midnight. And then at midnight, I'm going to celebrate Pokemon night for just a couple of minutes. And then we will raid out to KR probably if he's still on. Champ, thank you so much for doing this, and I appreciate you as always. Thank you everyone for listening to the audio podcast or on Facebook Live. We'll be back next week for episode 333. We'll have live Wizards coverage. We'll also talk about the week for the Caps, and we'll talk about any wrestling news and DC United news that comes about from that as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Poquiqueño, sayonara.
So we are out on that, I think. So, yep. All right. So we are still live here on Twitch. We're gonna switch gears in just a second to do some video editing. How are you doing tonight, Andy?
Good, good. What's up, guys? How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, yeah, for sure. I'm gonna do a quick switch of computers here to see. I've been testing the other one to see if it works. Let me go back to it as that was the original plan. So let me switch camera and mic for 1 second.
Well, I'm gonna drop off, Robbie, because I gotta get ready for bed because I got a meeting early in the morning.
Yep, that's all good. Just gotta switch the audio sources. There you go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I totally understand. Thank you so much for being a co-host of that last hour, and we'll definitely talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Y'all take care. Yep. Yep.
See you.
All right, let me just see here. Test 1 2. Okay, good. I don't think there's an echo.